Hey everyone, it's Tyler back with another video. This week I'm breaking down part 2 of how I lift and sprint in the same program. Now, last week I talked a little bit about how I train during a specific session and throughout a specific week. In this video, I'm going to talk more about how I train on a monthly basis and on a yearly basis. So if you haven't seen that video, I recommend you check that out. Otherwise, parts of this video won't make sense or you'll think something's missing. That's because it's in the previous video. Now, the most important thing about this video is going to be the concept of periodization. All periodization means is that as the year goes on, my workouts are going to get more specific. Specific workouts are very good because they help us target the right things and help us improve performance very directly. If your max speed or your speed endurance improves, it's really easy to see how that can improve your running performance. The problem with really specific workouts is that they tend to lose their effect. You can plateau very quickly if you're doing very specific work. If a workout is very specific, it's also going to be very intense, so you're not going to be able to have a ton of volume. Volume is what helps us to create structural adaptations. So on the other hand, we have very general work rates like amount of muscle mass, strength. These don't directly contribute to your performance, but they set up later traits. Speed is just the combination of strength at a specific moment in time. So if you don't have a certain level of strength, you're not going to be able to express that strength in a short amount of time. So squatting more weight won't directly make you faster, but if you're much stronger, you have a much higher level of speed you'll be able to achieve once you add in these specific workouts. And so the beauty of general weight room work, it allows you to continue to progress and continue to overload without things getting very stale. So now the question is, throughout the year, how do I have a lot of volume in the program while also getting specific workouts later in the program? Is that I want to have 3 phases throughout the year that I'm focusing on. In the typical periodization program, you have the off season, the transition phase, and the in-season phase. And I think these are a good ballpark. The thing is, the off season is very long. That transition period usually tends to be pretty short, and the competition phase varies depending on your level. But because the weight room isn't the most specific thing that I do, I'm not worried if it lines up exactly with my competition season. Especially as I get into competition, I'm trying to keep my weight room work at more of a maintenance level and work on very specific things like plyometrics, like cleans, lighter, faster movements with smaller ranges of motion. So the opposite of that very early on is the general work with lots of volume, lower intensity, and bigger ranges of motion. And this looks like your traditional bodybuilder-ish kind of weightlifting. And there's a reason for that. Bigger muscles are able to produce more force when you get later into the season. And so I do think early in the season, in that off season throughout the summer months, that is the time to focus on building muscle. So as your off season is coming to an end, I like to have my weight room transition before the running. So when you're in the winter, you're getting into the indoor season, that's when I like to focus on max strength. And I'll usually do that from maybe December until February. And then once I get into March, April, May, that competition season, that's when I want my most specific weight room work. And to show you what I'm talking about here, I'm going to break down 3 different kinds of exercises and how I would modify it for each level of the season. Let's take something really basic like a single leg squat. If I was going to do a single leg squat in the early off season, my goal here is to get a lot of volume, to build some muscle. And so I want higher reps, medium-ish weight, and I want as many sets as I can reasonably fit into the workout. Basically, this is a weight that you can get 8 to 12 reps and it's really starting to be difficult, and then you take 2 or 3 minutes and you do 4 or 5 sets. This is a really fatiguing workout. This is not the kind of workout you want to do when you have to race the next day. This is the kind of workout that you want to do when you don't have anything going on the next day. Now, if I were at the end of my off season, kind of that beginning of my transition period, this is when I would want to focus on my max strength. So I would do fewer sets, maybe only 3 or 4. And I want my weight to be a lot heavier. This is something that I can only get for 3 to 5 reps. It's starting to get more specific because it's very intense, so there is a lot of neurological demand. but it's also still relatively slow. It's got a larger range of motion, and so you're not quite as specific as sprinting. If I were going to do this exercise 2 or 3 days before a meet in my competition season, I want to make sure that it's lightweight, very fast, and very intense. I also want to make sure that my volume is much lower, and this is the thing that you have to understand. Your intensity is going to go up throughout the season, but if your volume stays high, you're still going to be very fatigued. So I might do my single leg in a quarter squat position and with a really light weight, like a 45-pound dumbbell, maybe even lighter, and I'm basically jumping off of one leg while holding this weight. So now we are moving the weight very fast. It's much more similar to sprinting because we're using a taller range of motion. We might have that leg a little bit closer in to the body. These are all things that are going to make it more specific. It's not as specific as going out and sprinting because that's not our goal, but you can see how it's much more similar than the squat was earlier. The biggest takeaway you need to have from periodization is that as your intensity goes up, your fatigue needs to be coming down, and the only way you can do that is if you also bring down your volume. Volume tends to be what gets you fatigued. Intensity might make you tired in the acute sense. If you do your 1 rep max, you're not going to come in the next day and be ready to do your 1 rep max again. In the day or 2 days following high intensity work, you are going to be acutely fatigued. But chronic long-term physical fatigue is mostly due to volume. So if you only take away one thing from this video, I will say that as you progress your season, yes, your intensity is going to go up, but unless you bring your volume down, that is going to lead to athletes being burnt out instead of peaking at the right time. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I'll try and read those and get back to you. As always, thank you for watching the video and I'll see you next week.